so much I want to share, I want to give over. Sometimes, they ask you to come speak your story, and you want to give over so much, Baruch Hashem. So I'll bore you guys for another hour, so we'll see how you guys do afterwards. Hashem. It's very, very interesting the way Hashem works in the world, I look at it, if you ask most Bali Tshuva, most Gerim, they tell you that they had a moment, they had something that sparked them, and some type of feeling that they had, or they felt like they were completely disconnected from the world. I had a moment like that. Everything doesn't start there, but I later on realized in life that I had always felt like that. I always felt different, felt like, I was at a place that I didn't belong. And Hashem, as He does so lovingly, He brings everything into fruition, and you see it. I grew up in a house where both of my parents sold drugs. Drugs were also used in my house. My mother and my father were also part of the first hip-hop group. My mother was a rapper. My father was a rapper. And the generations before, previously, like my uncles and my grandparents, they all played instruments, with big names. And so I honestly really didn't have a shot at anything else except for music. But growing up, I always had this wonderful, wonderful, wonderful home environment, which was one of love. And at the same time, I also seen things that were very, very dysfunctional, for the lack of a better term. I would come home some days as 8 years old, 10 years old, and see kilos of dope on the table, drugs, people high. And this was what you thought life was supposed to be. I didn't know anything else. If a person's exposed to this at an early age, this is what you think that life is. When I was about 8 years old, we were battle ran by the FBI. One of my uncles was a really, really big drug lord to some degree. I hate using these terms because I just knew him as uncle, But that's what they call guys like that. When you push a certain amount, it becomes a problem, and they come and look for you. So I remember waking up as a boy, my mother having on the floor with a gun to her head, and everybody around me had guns on them, and they're in handcuffs. And I'm startled, shocked, didn't know what was going to happen. Remember, our officer got me dressed and sent me off to school, and I had no idea who was going to be at home when I got home. I had no idea what was going to be. Just want to draw an illustration for you to get the understanding what type of environment I was in. Later on, around 9 years old, later on that year, my grandfather came to live with us. My grandfather was a Sunni Muslim. He taught me Islam. I prayed with him 5 times a day. And he was very influential. It was the only spirituality, I would say, that entered into my life. There was nothing else. My parents were secular. And also something about a grandparent. I don't know. I heard because they get to sugar up the kids and send them home that they have such a great relationship with the grandkids, So for whatever reason, my grandfather was really it was very, very influential on me. Shortly after his time with us, he was also taken in. He was sent to prison on a probation violation. Sorry, can you guys hear me? This is bring it closer. Okay. And so this was it. So after my grandfather went to prison, if anybody asked me at that time, I would have told them I'm a Muslim. So when I was about 13 years old, I had friends that invited me to a camp. This camp was at a community center, and it was great for me because at this point in my life, I really needed a safe haven. I'm hitting my teenage years, and life has been one way, the only way that I know it, and it's a critical point. I look back now at what Hashem was doing. It was such a critical point. At 13 is when you're bar mitzvah. I was 13 years old, this camp entered into my life. I had a full program going on, and they had a hip-hop program, and I was so involved. I was so elated. I had an opportunity to have a platform to express myself musically. So one of the things about this camp was they were very, very adamant about me going to camp with them. They have a camp, it's like a missionary camp. They get you there for about 8 days or whatever, and they ask you all these very, very thought-provoking and deep questions. You build camaraderie with other people, tell all your business, and not only do they have the questions, but they also have the answers. Very, very sweet people. It was a very, very awesome experience for me because I left there a Christian, and I left there being able to eat pork. So, it was a very, very good experience, I thought, at the time. So Hashem, fast forwarding a little bit, I remember I was about 16 years old. And 16 years old was a very, very critical time for me because, after I went to that camp, I was very, very religious for about 8 months. And I stopped hanging out with all of my friends and everything else. I started changing the way that I was talking. It was great for me. I was just going into high school. And so it kind of set me on the straight path. And right around 16 years old, something just happened. I had a moment, this moment I was talking about earlier, where I remember walking into the classroom, to the lunchroom. And I just walked through the doors and something hit me. And I felt like I was out of place. I felt like I knew something that other people didn't know. I felt like I had something, but I felt so disconnected from my environment. I had no idea what it was. Ate a chicken nugget, it was over. But it was a moment, it was an experience that I never forgot. So also when I was 16 years old, this is my time of also too. I don't know what they say works and what happens chemically in the brain when a person becomes 16, but something, you either go crazy or you become a great kid. It's one or the other. So when I was 16, I became very, very, very obsessed with my Bible. I became very, very obsessed with outreach. I became involved with the program that I was previously going to, and I started bringing other people. I started working with the kids, and I was working there every summer, working with kids. As a young guy, I was able to work my way up. I got smicha, I became a junior missionary, and I was bringing people, in a major way. I had so many kids from my school coming to this place. They started putting me on posters. I was the poster child for this organization, this Christian organization, and I was moving up somewhere in the world. Around this time, I was one of my CDs, one of my demos that I had made it from a friend to a friend to a friend and landed on the desk of an A&R of a big record label. Shortly after this, I started receiving calls from this record label, and I was talking to them, they were talking to me. I was very excited to work with them. They appeared to be very excited to work with me. They said, we just want you to make slight adjustments to the music a little bit. We want you to start, peppering in a curse word here and there. They wanted it to be a lot harder because what was happening in rap at that time was guys like 50 Cent. I'm sorry he doesn't have a zechut to be mentioned on the stage here at the shul, but if you know who he is, shame on you. If you don't know who he is, thank God. But this was out. This was the trash that was out at the time. And so one of the things that they do in the music industry, they're not really looking to break something new, really. It's only people that are really willing to take risks. But for the most part, everybody wants to make a carbon copy of the same thing. Whatever's out, it's already working. I don't want to do anything else to tamper it. I may lose my job or whatever. So I started making my records a little bit harder, a little bit stronger, emphasizing, And before you knew it, I became a whole different person on CD than who I was in person. I remember one time I met with a local reporter, and we sat down to do an interview. This is after I released my record independently by then. And he said, you know what? You're actually not a bad guy. You're actually a good guy. I can talk. And I'm thinking, myself, I know I jump in the character on the song, but I wasn't thinking at the time. And I'm talking to him, and he says, you're actually really a good guy. This is the first time I started thinking about what am I saying? And I seen that I'm coming to people covered in darkness, expecting for them to see light. I had no idea before. I hadn't thought about it, but he put that in my head, and it was something. It sat there, didn't move on it immediately, but it was something that was in my head. So sure, what comes along with the rapping and everything with the harder persona comes along people that are actually doing it and not just rapping about it. And so I found myself slowly but surely I found myself in a crowd of guys that were very similar to the type of guys I was hanging out with before I had my 8th grade experience. And so slowly but surely you fall into things, you start to slowly fall away from where you were. I don't know what that. I don't think I lost my smicha or anything like that with the junior missionary program. But I definitely wasn't a good representation by the time that things kept going. So I remember one of the things we wanted to do was get a bidding war. So I started to plan a trip to New York, and I thought that maybe if I could get this record label and that record label and this record label to take interest in me, then maybe I'll be able to land even more money from these guys, just to kind of pump it up a little bit. During this time, I remember one night I went down into the studio to write with a friend of mine, and we kept writing, and we kept writing, and we kept writing. I heard a boom, and I went upstairs, and it said my mother was falling over. She was very, very high, stated for lack of a better term, from pain medication. She had been addicted to pain medication. And I remember constantly waking her up, and I was waking her up, and I said, Mom, go sleep in my bed, go sleep in my bed. And something, I don't know what it was about that night, but it was so different. And I just broke down and I started crying. My mother was very, very precious to me. Although she had things that were her, but she was a very, very special woman. And I remember putting her in my bed to lay down and go to sleep. And I was talking at the time to my girlfriend, who was soon to be my wife. And I said to her, I said, one day I feel like I'm going to go to try to wake her up and she won't wake up. That very night, I lost my mother to her drug addiction, to pain medication. I was in the studio, and my stepfather and my sister came down and woke me up. Her pushed me and pushed me. They banged on the door and they said, she's gone, she's gone. I went upstairs and I was crying, and after that, and the pain that I felt at that moment should have been the exact pain. It should have been the pain that make me make tshuva. It should have been the pain. The pain was so, you don't expect it. My mother was 37 when she passed away. I remember going upstairs and crying my eyes out. And recently I had a friend who come to comfort me. And his mother had just died 2 months ago. And I said, this pain, I said, when does it stop? When does it stop? He says, I don't know if it ever stops. It hasn't stopped for me. And I remember feeling like in my prayers, I said, I wouldn't wish the pain that I feel on my worst enemy. Even if it's the worst enemy I had in the world, I would never wish this pain upon that person. These are the thoughts, the working process of what tshuva is when a person begins to fall into a deep state of like, I'm in a place of pain, and nothing could have helped me. Nothing could have helped me get out of that except for Hashem. I became very, very confused for the next few days. I couldn't even stay at my house. So following this, I ended up going on my trip to New York to go meet with all these different record labels. And thank God, nothing worked out. I went to go meet with Slim Shady Records. I went to go meet with Atlantic. I went to go meet with Dame Dash after him and Jay-Z had split. This is right after. And all these, what seemed to be like they were going to be hopeful situations, by the time I got back to Seattle, everything had crumbled. And so now we had only one decision, and that was to put out a record independently, which we did. So we decided to go up and down and solicit our records hand to hand, out of the trunk, as they say, get kicked out of the malls and all the movie theaters, We went for it, and it's just so interesting that you can see, like a little foot soldier going hand to hand, how much it spread. It spread from local media to national media, and then it became something that was that started to really take off and have its own legs. Now, along with this type of success comes obvious jealousy. There was a individual who thought, also too, you should have a background on that. This thing that happens in rap, when one rapper talks about another rapper, and they go back and forth, and it's no different than WWE wrestling. I'm sorry. It's also the same with politics also. You're arguing in the living room, and they go out for dinner after the debate. So it's a very, very interesting thing. But, so this guy, I didn't know him so well, but he decided he would say a few things about me in a song, and very disrespectful things. And so, what happens? What did he want? He wanted for me to make another song back, and then that would promote him, and then we go tit for tat, and then, he'll also have a name, and maybe, that's how the people try to do it, Very, very interesting. So I sat and I talked with my chevra there, and we discussed what was gonna be the best way to go about it, and we decided we're just gonna beat the guy up, and that'll stop the songs, So we did that. We went to go to a nightclub and went to find him. I don't even know how it happened or whatever. I don't know how much. I don't know how they found him. Anyway, they found this guy. It was already 2 cars that had went up of friends of mine, and then we also went up, and we got into a brawl outside a nightclub. Typical thing. And then I remember after leaving, I got a call from a friend, and he said that the police are looking for you. I said, what are the police looking for me for? What did I fight at a nightclub? Everybody fights at nightclubs. It's no biggie. And he said, no, the police said that you had a gun, and you took it, and you were shooting at the club, you were shooting outside, and I knew I didn't even have a gun at the time, so I knew that this is but my heart started panicking. I remember getting off the phone, worried, and just rounding up the rest of my friends, and we dashed out. And we went downstairs, and as we went out of the door, we seen sirens, we seen the lights from police cars, and we looked from a distance, and we seen that they had somebody surrounded. So we walked closer and closer and closer. You should know that it's not very common in the African American community to walk towards the police cars. We walked the other way. But I was I wanted to see what was going on. It was something fishy was going on over there. So I started walking towards the lights to see if I could get a better look, and it turned out that it was one of my really good friends. In my defense, he went up there and he tried to take the other person's life. Thank God he was unsuccessful, but it left me in a bind, because what happens when that type of thing happens in the streets is that if that person doesn't die, he was shot at, he has no idea on who's coming for him, if I sent the person or anything like that. So the only logic is, or at least the street logic is that I need to go and kill that person before the situation happens again. And so my obvious conclusion was that I need to go and take this person's life before he takes my life. Put me in a bind. And it's in these type of moments, I think, that Hashem reveals himself the most. When a person, you're caught in between a rock and hard place. You don't really know, you don't want to go this way, you don't want to go that way. And this is a cheshbon that I've seen all throughout my years. I've seen people on the street. I'm close with this one, and I know this guy. He shoots him, he survives, he doesn't know who did it, he's going to go and kill, or he's going to go he doesn't know what he's going to do. So this type of thing, I wouldn't say that it's uncommon, but I think that what happens usually is that a person thinks, all right, whatever, I'm Superman and I'm going to go take out whoever did this, whoever shot at me, whoever shot me, whoever. And, that wasn't my path. Very, very quickly, I felt like, I started crying. I just started crying to God, and I started telling Hashem every day, I was telling him, I don't want to do that. I don't want to take nobody else's life. This is not the life that I want. And I'm crying to Hashem every day, walking back and forth. And by Hashgacha, my phone rang, maybe 2 or 3 days later, and it was the other guy. He also thought that, listen, he's coming to kill me, so I'm going to... And so we talked on the phone, and after that we squashed everything, and I sat and I thought, I made a cheshbon. I said, listen, if I continue in the same way, with the music, with the nonsense, and next time it's going to be the real thing. And I said, but if I stop, and if I do something now, and I change my life, then I can start anew. I can do something brand new. And so that's what I did. There was only one friend that I really kept in contact with, and he's here with me tonight, my brother-in-law, Yosef. And apart from that, I stayed away from people for a good amount of time until I sorted things out in my head after I got over that scare. And one thing I didn't do, I was very consistent in, was talking to Hashem every single moment of the day. And while that happened, one of the things that happened was all the questions that I had when I was a young crusader in Bible study there, I had all these questions on Christianity that was never answered to me. They never had the answer, and never satisfied what I was looking for. And so all of it started to reset, and I started to ask myself, why do I believe what I believe? What is it? And all of this, you should know that what I told you from the beginning of my childhood, I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood. I seen Jews every day. They were going to shul every day. I wasn't so happy that they were crowding the streets. I wanted to ride my bike on Saturdays, but I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood, and I didn't know anything about Judaism. So I started to research. I went to rabbigoogle.com. Harav Shlita, I go in Google.com. Expert in any halakha, any area of halakha, anything in it. No, hashkafa also. I stay away from his hashkafa stuff, but in halakha he was great for me. But anyway, I started to ask all of these different questions, and for whatever reason, anything I typed into I would like type in, Jewish Bible, and Chabad.org came up. And then I would type in Jewish holiday, and Chabad.org came up. And I would type in Judaism, and Chabad.org came up. So I started going on Chabad.org, and I was fascinated. It had so many different tools and things that were accessible to me, but it still for me was so distant from what I had already knew. I started to find and research if I can find something more. It was very, very hard for me to let the idea that JC, of not being the Messiah, go. I couldn't let that go. So I found that there were Jews for JC, and I started looking things up online, and I found a congregation that was about 5 miles or so away from me. So I started going there, and I was there for about 2 years. I started going to this place, and when I walked in, the first time I walked in, it was a beautiful Kodesh. They had real Sefer Torah. People were davening on shtinders out of art scrolls, Sidorim, in Hebrew, and I didn't know. It was a culture shock for me either way when I walked inside. And so I remember it wasn't until after they read from the Haftarah that they started reading from the other book over there. So you knew where they stood. But I stayed at this place for about 2 years, and it was very, very hard for me because all I wanted to do was catch up. I wanted to catch up. I didn't know Hebrew. I didn't know anything. What's that mean? What's that? What's the Talmud? What's that? What's that? And so in order for us to start catching up with things, I just started learning more and more and more, more and more and more. And I had my brother-in-law with me, obviously my wife at this time. And my wife, I remember when I decided to tell my wife, she didn't have no idea what was going on with me. She just seen me learning, and I was spending about 8 hours a day just learning. I had a perfect situation where I was able to spend and waste that much time of my life on anything. And I took advantage of it with learning and trying to find the truth. And I remember finding myself so many times I was just so broke, and I had the pressure, first off, that I wanted to reveal it to my wife. My wife had grew up Southern Baptist, strong Pentecostal, started screaming in different languages, fall out on the floor and stand back up and fall out on the floor again. I don't know if you guys ever had any exposure to that, but stay away, it's dangerous. It was very, very hard for me to break these things to my wife. And I remember crying every day. Hashem he was revealing so many different things to me. And I remember I started fasting 3 days at a time. I wasn't taking any food. I was only drinking, I would drink bits of water at a certain time in the day. I would take water. And for 3 days at a time I was doing this. I did it many times, and I was going out for hours talking to Hashem in the night. I knew nothing about Hebrew, the Dut, or Breslov, or had no clue or anything about that. I just was talking to Hashem looking for answers. And I remember one day when I mustered up the strength and I went to my wife and I said, made sure I sat on a different couch than her. She sat over there, I sat over here. Made sure if anything went flying across the room, I had enough time to duck. And so I told her, I said, listen, I don't want to celebrate Christmas anymore. I don't want to do Easter anymore. She said, I don't want to be married anymore. And it was very, very tough. But over time, Baruch Hashem, she, my wife, to tell you, I can really tell you now because she's not here, so it's the truth. She's a tzaddik, and she really has a true hergish for ruchnius. She feels and she knows, and so it wasn't long for her to on herself to want to search and to find out the truth. So I started to learn with her every day. Everything that I seen, I learned with her, and we started going through it. And then finally, eventually, we got on what we thought was going to be the same page. I still had already started well before her, so I was sort of like trying to make it all work. That's always not good. Try to make sure you're always on the same page. We'll get to that later. So here we are, and now we're going to this other place over there. And now the more and more I start learning about traditional Judaism, or Yiddishkeit, I started going to Chabad, me and my brother-in-law on the side, and we started to learn. And the more and more we learned, the further and further away from real Yiddishkeit this place looked. It didn't look so Jewish after a while. And I remember what was happening at this time was a big conference. I had a big conference coming to Seattle. And all the Jews for JC conferences, congregations were coming from the west and the east and everything. They do it every year, but for the first time it's going to be in Seattle, and this congregation that I was a part of was hosting it. So I remember before in the preparations for this conference, they told us, listen, whatever you do, don't talk to the rabbis that are going to be in the hallway. These guys, they're not good news. They're only trying to take you away from JC. Don't speak to them. Don't say hi to them. Don't do this. So we figured that we'd go to the conference, and instead of going into the conference, we went to go sit and hang out with the rabbis on the couch and ask them real questions. So I don't think they liked that too much, but I had questions, so I started hanging out. We hang out with the rabbis. And after going back and forth and all these many different ideas and things, I sat with the rabbi, and one of the things that the rabbi said, it struck me, because I was really trying to hold on to both. And what was my fear? My fear was that in the Christian Bible says if you don't believe in JC, you go to hell. So I was on nothing other than you're trying to hold on to the fact that you want to hold on to this thing, And the rabbi said to me, listen, but this time I was already studying Chazal. I was into it 100%. We already had kosher kitchen. I was davening, everything. And he said, listen, he says that we learn about Gerut from the story of Ruth. He says, what is she saying? Your God is my God, your people is my people. He said, what is she saying? And I said, what is he saying? He broke it down for me. He said like this. He says that ultimately what she's saying in your case for Ruth is that I will accept what the Jewish people accept, and I will reject what the Jewish people reject. But you can't have to. And that hit me in the heart. After that, I never went back to the congregation. In fact, I called the rabbi afterwards, and I told him, I said, listen, I'm really interested in moving forward with the Garrison. What do I do? He made calls for us in Seattle. And by this time, my wife was really, really excited. She had already told me a week before, I want to move on, and I want to go to Orthodox community, and I want to Garrison. Wasn't so sure. After that, I had all the fuel that I needed. But one of the things is, like I said before, sometimes you're moving, and you got everything set, but the other partner is not all the way there. And I remember one time I went to the person who became my Rebbe, a wonderful Rebbe in Seattle. I mean, I wish I can talk more and more about him, but there's no praises that I could say to talk about my Rebbe in Seattle. He's amazing. I remember the first day I met him, and I told him about my issue, how fast I wanted to move, and I was so on fire for Hashem, and he told me, and I told him, listen, my wife, she's not moving so fast. My brother-in-law was also dealing with the same issue. We were like trying to move. And so what happens, generally you're making too many comments, listen, you may want to blah, 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 blah. Wife was not having it, okay? So I went to this Rebbe, and I told him, I said, listen, I want to move forward, and my wife's not so interested in moving as fast as I am. She wants to, but she's not interested in it. He said, listen, he says, what you're seeing, and I didn't understand this until later, he said, but what you're seeing is two different attributes of Hashem's Rachamim, the 13 attributes, and I was familiar. And he says, for you, it's emes. He said, for you, it's emet. You've come to a place of emet, and nothing can move you from that, because that's how Hashem revealed himself to you. He said, but for your wife, it's erech hapayim. For your wife, Hashem's revealing a whole different meaning to her. And I said, thanks. What does that do for me? And it wasn't until a couple weeks later that I really understood what he was saying. I was fortunate enough to be invited to one of the rabbis in the community, to his home, and he handed me a book called The Garden of Peace by Rabbi Shalom Arush. And I remember when I first got this book, I didn't know so much about it. My brother-in-law, he always researches. Every time I find out something, he already knew what it was or whatever. So he was very excited to get it. I just took it because the guy gave it to me. And I remember starting to read this book and feeling like, I can't believe how many things I was doing wrong in my marriage and trying to push my wife and all these different things. And I understood that Hashem can show and reveal himself to me as Emet, and reveal himself to my wife as Erech Hapayim. And after this book, I started doing an hour of people to do it every day. I started reading this book, and Rabbi Shalom, I recommend this is for males only. If you have, for the women, he has the woman's wisdom. If you're familiar with it, it's also good for the women. But I'm telling you, this changed everything for me so quick and so fast. I put the book down because I thought it was voodoo. And I I remember afterwards and seeing that my wife was saying everything that he said she would say. She was doing all the things that he was doing. And I started to see that slowly but surely we ended up on the same page and going forward. And at this time, my brother and my sister-in-law, we were three families. My brother and sister-in-law and a good friend of ours all moved into the community. And it was very interesting. We all ended up in this community within a few blocks or whatever from each other. My brother and sister-in-law and I actually, we got into one big house. And so, for whatever reason, as Jews, we have a habit of moving into expensive neighborhoods. I wasn't Jewish. Couldn't afford the neighborhood. So listen, we took the upstairs, and my brother and sister-in-law, they took the downstairs, and we thought that it would be, that we would make it work. But slowly but surely, as the family grows, then the walls don't expand. It's not necessarily Yerushalayim. So we had to make a move, and it became very apparent to us also too that we're two separate families. And even though we all wanted to make it, get us together, we all wanted to do, it just wasn't going to happen because we're a family and you're a family, and we need to have our space to operate differently. So we moved out. We got a place, and my brother and sister-in-law stayed in the house. And so now the time came for us to go to the Beit Din, and we were supposed to go. We were scheduled to go 1 month. I want to say it was a month or a month and a half before my brother and sister-in-law. They were next to go before the Beit Din. Nobody's rushing to make Gerim for some reason, I don't know. But anyway, so we ended up going in. We had it was a meeting, and you're interrogated, and you stand before 8 beards, and they drill you, and Baruch Hashem. And so we left out feeling like it was okay. It was a very, very, very good meeting. And then something happened, and the rabbis needed to have another meeting. So they said, call in the next candidates, which happened to be my brother and sister-in-law. So they went in only a few days after we went. So they ended up going in. And then after their meeting, the rabbis decided, you know what, this is all really one big family, so we need to have all of you together. So the very thing that we thought in the beginning happened. So Baruch Hashem, 3.5 years ago, I, myself, my wife, her sister, my best friend since kindergarten, all went into the mikvah on the same day, and we had a wonderful double wedding, Baruch Hashem, and that is my story. So from that, after that, it's okay to clap and stuff like that. It's okay. I like that part out. So I like to answer questions because, I remember I used to watch TV all the time, all the time. I used to watch TV. And there's nothing worse than seeing the guy ask questions and he's never asking the questions that you would have asked the person. So I want to give everybody an opportunity to ask questions if you feel courageous enough to ask a question about anything, nothing's off limits.
Yeah, you mentioned that day when you walked into the lunchroom when you were younger, that feeling. Mm-hmm. As you're growing up and you're more involved in Judaism, do you know what that feeling was?
Yeah, I felt like it was my neshama revealing to me that I didn't belong. I feel like it was a clue and a hint. And what happened to me later is I started to see that wasn't the only time that happened to me. That was just the most impactful. It was so strong that it left the biggest impact. But I started to think about, I always felt different when I was a kid. I was less violent than the people around me. I remember one time I got in trouble with the cousins of mine. And just give you an illustration, this was the type of kid I was. And I don't know, we were misbehaving in the mall, running around and things like that. And I don't know if you know about the way that people did it, at least in that day, disciplined their children, but we got beat with an extension cord by the nicest cousin I knew. So I don't know, whatever we did, it must have been horrible. So I remember us all getting whooped with whelps and, bleeding after this. And I remember crying, and my other cousins that was in there, after they left out, they look at me and they go, and I'm looking like, these guys are crazy. I'm bleeding. Like, what are you? I was never that person. I wasn't always looking to get my tooth busted by my older cousin and jumping on it. I wasn't that person. I was always a deep thinker as a kid. My mother will always say, I would talk to my mother, she couldn't even go to places I would go. Even questions I had on God as a young kid, my grandfather would be spooked out. So I was never really felt like I was in place. And I think that only now it only shows. It shows that it's more revealed. It's a gilui, you understand, of what that feeling may have been. So.
What age did you become Jewish?
I was 26.
What happened to your father?
My biological father is now a Christian theologian and professor. He's actually a doctor and teaches at a Bible university. And he's turned out to be he also too has made a complete 360. He's a guy, you meet him, you would never know his past was his past. And so, Baruch Hashem, we all have our mahalik, but that was his path that he took, and he's doing actually very well now. Good question. Mm-hmm.
Probably a silly question, but did you ever have any regrets? Not regrets, it was hard, but you just wanted to drop it, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because I have to say, being Jewish is not an easy thing.
Right. I think so. That's one thing you could say. Being Jewish is not an easy thing. I think it depends because
But it's not
right.
you know.
It's a privilege, but see, here's the difference. Is I think if you were born Jewish, and you were raised Jewish, in that regard, it's much harder for a person naturally just to appreciate anything. You look at people. I just had a discussion with somebody the other day. People that grow up in the world and they knew that, listen, what you do, you get a job, you go to college. It's for a person who grew up more sheltered and maybe from a Hasidic family, they don't go to school. He may go to school and excel better than people that they just know that's what they're supposed to do. And he took a different path from the rest of his whatever, for better or for worse. It happens. But I think the truth of the matter is that for me, I was able to see when Hashem revealed to me that I was in a dark place and I'm going towards light. For a person that's already Jewish, you're already born into such a beautiful bris, such a beautiful covenant between HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Nam Yisrael, and such a magnificent light. Sometimes, though, our eyes are closed, if you understand what I'm saying. So you don't get to experience the light. You don't get to experience the hana, the pleasure of the light. But that doesn't remove the fact that the light is there. And the only thing that sometimes you may have an experience where even whether a person's been from for birth, FFB, or FFH, from habit, whatever you want to call it, that a person has an experience that opens their eyes, and then you get to see the light and you get to receive pleasure from that light. But sometimes you're right, it takes an experience to make that happen for me, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's not easy. I think it's very, very easy for me, but that's only because of the experience that I have. But sometimes it makes up, we got to be a Baal Tshuva. Everybody has to be Baal Tshuva in order to experience, right?
One more question.
Uh-huh.
After you took this upon yourself, did your family support you? I don't know if I missed it from the beginning.
No problem.
But did your family, they supported you, or were they against it? I don't know.
No, I received some support from my biological father. For sure, he was there at the chasana. He was there when after the garrison, and for sure he has an appreciation because he's religious. The family that was not religious, they did. My mother passed away when I was 19 of an overdose, so she never got to see any of the transition. But the other family that I had, and I think the toughest part is just, it has nothing to do with the theological aspect of anything. It's more so about that it created a distance and a separation between me and them. So I think in Baklal, people are not too happy that they don't get to experience me, and things are different, and I'm not the same person. I don't talk the same way. I don't behave in the same way. I don't take pleasure in the same things. So it's very, very hard to make a relationship out of something when it's very, very different for me. So, no problem. Did anybody try to stop me from converting the Yetzer Hara? Sure, he was after me, swinging. But you know what? I didn't feel, nobody did. I mean, the rabbi's supposed to reject you. My rabbi he kept pushing it off, pushing it off, pushing it off, pushing it off. I had the privilege of converting with the sweet and awesome Rabbi Benzikin, Simon Benzikin in Seattle. He's a Moroccan. He's amazing. He does everything. He's a Moel. He's a Chazan. He's a rabbi. He's a shochet. He's everything. And he just really, at the end of all of that, all of his great talents, he's just mamish. He's a sweet, sweet individual. But so he tried the best he could to push it off or whatever. But inside he's a very, very loving individual. So it wasn't too long before he became like my uncle or something. That's sure.
Since you didn't have a bar mitzvah at 13, did you, then after when you turned 2 years, did you have a bar mitzvah at that time, or you just watched stuff and later?
That's a good question. I have a bar mitzvah. I think the bar mitzvah for me was the day I went to the mikvah, That was my bar mitzvah. This is the day that I really became, when I took on the mitzvot. At that point, was there something that actively happened? No, there wasn't nothing that actively happened. Like a ceremony or anything like that. I didn't read my Perashah or anything like that, but so no, it wasn't an active real bar mitzvah. What type of Chassidut? Breslov. Became Breslov. As I shared earlier in the story, as I first became a student of Rabbi Shalom Arush by reading his books. I started reading the Garden of Peace, was the first thing. Then I seen just such the power that it had in changing my marriage. That was what I did, and then shortly after that, I got the Garden of Emunah, got the Enforced. I started reading Rabbi Shalom Arush's books, and then slowly that led into me reading Meshivat Nefesh by Rabbi Nachman, and also Likutei Moharan, and it just seemed like a proper path. I think that one of the things that connected me to Breslov more than anything else was the fact that I felt like the words of Rabbi Nachman was like a life coach, speaking into me, strengthening me in my voda. I felt like I can really achieve things. Sometimes you read a sefer and it's telling you great things, whether it's a book in Musar or Chassidut, and it's explaining beautiful ideas. But where's the practical eitzah to attain it? Where do I grasp, how to really truly be, a gentle person and a kind person, and how to overcome anger? How do I, what I mean? And when I fall, what do I do? And I think that's one of the reasons why they say Rabbi Nachman is a spiritual doctor, that he has all the eitzah for what happens when a person falls and how to treat that. So that's what brought me into Breslov. Huh? Likutei Moharan, nobody's able to really understand that, to be honest. I'm giving it to you honest as tzaddikim today that just really don't know what, because of how great the Rebbe was. But within it, there is something to understand from it, because it's practical eitzah that comes out from some of the lessons. You may not be able to go deep into the Kabbalah of it, but he's really good about bringing down and drawing out practical advice from each Torah. So that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. No, I didn't really. I was talking about smicha from the Christian. I had a little junior missionary card. Actual smicha, I did not get. Yeah.
When did you read the Brit Milah?
Huh? When did I have a Brit Milah? It's very great. I never thought I've been asked a lot of questions, but I haven't been asked that one publicly yet. Baruch Hashem, my mother took care of me when I was a baby. So, there's a process that you do in order to go through Geras, have some breathe, but my mother took care of me as a baby. Thank God, Baruch Hashem.
Having background in both Islam and Christianity, and with currently what's going on in the world, how do you think is the best way to approach someone who's falling off the Derech of Hashem? Like, how do you approach them? How do you bring them back?
How to bring back a neshama. The first thing is to understand with anything, right? Anything in life, you need to understand what the situation is, what the problem is. Now, generally, what I've seen, because I'm also sick and working, especially with kids and youth, and that, is that what's pulling a person away really is the fact that It's the neshama itself trying to carve its way to Hashem in its own way. To for once believe, right? This is not just the idea of look at the Nekuda Tova. This is the emes. Is that the neshama of a yid is a chelik of Hashem. This is a piece of Hashem. To ever think that it's really receiving pleasure from shtiyot, that is receiving pleasure from chasing the world, is crazy. To even think it for a second. So we have to identify what's happening. What's happening really is that the neshama is trying to carve its own way to Hashem. That's all it wants. It's trying to find its way back. And the hiccup of that is it could be drugs, it could be whatever pulls a person away. It could be non-kosher music, it could be alcohol, whatever you say that pulls a person away. I once heard this by Shir, where Moshe Weinberg he talked about this. Generally, I found that a lot of the people that go off really had really big, huge neshamas. And the obstacle is that obstacle for that person is trying to carve its way back. The truth is that from that point, you have to get it to be revealed to that person that that's what they're after. Because the truth is that they think that these things are going to find pleasure in all these different things in the world, and they're really not going to find pleasure in it, but they think they're going to be finding it. So sometimes it happens in a way where they need to be told. I remember speaking to a group of boys in Beis Shemesh, a very, very good, wonderful group of boys. And, they had their challenges, and all of them were not comfortable, for lack of a better term, with their Yiddishkeit. But I had to tell them that. And at the end, I was able to speak and to open up so many of them that it is peer pressure. They do want to know what it's like to have a connection to Hashem. I find this also by yeshiva bachim that are black hat, that are in the prestigious yeshivas. I have bachim over every single Friday night. I have a group of bachim over a different group. I rotate. And also, too, everybody's looking to find a connection with Hashem. It's no different than a person who's going the other way. The question is, did they have it in the first place? Were they shown it at home? One of the illustrations, Harav Always, she says that, what little girl's going to want to keep Shabbos and light Shabbos candles if on Friday her mother's pulling her hair out, screaming and yelling right before Shabbos? It's very hard. So at the shorish already, at the root, we already see that there's something that's pulling, tugging, and trying to keep that neshama from taking pleasure in the hana of what it means to be connected to Hashem. Another thing is that, we're in a generation, one thing I can at least tell you from Reb Nachman, he says, what's going to be? First, he says two things. In one place, he says that in the generations to come, what's going to be? He says there's going to be great atheism in the world. It's going to be kafir like in a whole nother level, to the heights of which has never been seen before. But I'm telling you now to strengthen yourself in the Emunah before it comes. Another thing he says in another place is that what's going to be by the tzaddikim in the last generation. He said that Hashem's going to raise the tzaddikim and they're only going to speak on the Emunah, nothing else. They're not going to stand, they're not going to give a shir in Gemara, they're not going to give a shir in Halacha, they're only going to speak in the Emunah because the people will be at a time before Mashiach so weak in the Emunah that that's the only thing that's going to speak to the neshama. We're in a generation, people learn Torah, right, today, and I remember my Rebbe Moshe Rabinowitz, the way that the earlier generations would receive Musa was through learning Gemara, through the Agadah. Now today, it's not the same. The level of Torah is not on the same. So everything has been broken down, it's been dumbed down and watered down and all that. And so you have these big neshamas that's looking for a way to connect to Hashem. They don't want it the way their grandfather had it. They don't want what their parents had. They're trying to find their own way. And usually, with Hashem's help, when they find it, they become chazak. They're so strong in their avoda. They're so strong. They're good neshamas. And they're big, and they in turn bring a whole lot of other people back. And so it matters about how much light is able to make it to the dark place that neshama is in. So in order, like Moshe Rabbeinu, he comes down off of the mountain, his face is glowing because he was in the presence of Hashem. For a person to wake up out of the darkness, that means Hashem has to crank up an excessive amount of light to be able to reach that person in the darkness. Once they come back, their face is glowing like Moshe Rabbeinu, and it illuminates the whole entire place. It says, why about Chuvas? They go through what they go through, but then they come back and they bring so many other neshamas. So it's not always that it's, listen, this person's lost. And the number one thing that we could do for anybody is pray. We have to daven on each other. It's a huge thing, and it comes from the lack of knowing how important our tefillah is, how much that Hashem wants to hear us, and how much we can affect in the world. I'll tell you a story. You mind? I have a 4-year-old son. I took him out to go do Hebrew to do with me when he was 3 years old. He was just before his Upshin. And I took him, I said, listen, I'll take him out. I'm going to go do an hour. I'll take him out to go talk to Hashem for 10 minutes or something and bring him back home. He stayed a whole hour with me. And he's just so bad. Abba, I want to go to the fields. I want to go. So cute. So I said, okay, I'll take him. And I'm just like, this kid, he doesn't want to go home. So we took him out. So we said, we're going to feed the ducks. And there's no ducks. I'm like, Hashem, there's no ducks for us to feed about the kid, And he says, Abba, I want to feed the ducks. So I told him, sorry. I've had a bracha before. Don't stone me. So I told my son, I said, listen, if you want to see a ducky, you need to pray to Hashem. You got to talk to Hashem. So I told him to pray to Hashem. And I'm encouraging him, and he's talking, Hashem, I want to see a ducky. I want to see a ducky. And so I started with him, to help him out, So I started with him. And we both put our head down, and there was a duck right there, swimming in the pond. And I said, well, first I'm like, okay, this is kind of whatever. It was so quick. And there was no way. We didn't see it fly in. We don't know where it came from. Sometimes they do that thing, they hang out in the water. It could have popped up. I don't know what. But I told him, I said, listen. He said, but Abba, I want to feed the ducky. I want to feed it. I said, listen, Yaakov, you got to ask Hashem to feed the duck. You got to be specific in your tefillah. You got to talk to him. Yeah, ask Hashem. So he starts praying, and he's praying, and the duck is just going. I said, you got to keep going. You don't stop praying. You keep asking. So we sat down the matzah because I wanted to take him to a place I wanted to have his hands free. And about 4 or 5 steps, as we set the matzah down, the duck was behind us eating the matzah. And I said, Yaakov, look, you're feeding the ducks the matzah. Hashem heard your prayers. Listen. And he's like, so I took him. We keep going through the forest over by the lake. And he says to me, Abba, I want to see an eagle. Kids, It's like, Hashem, how are we going to do this one, And there's eagles there, so it's not like, but the fact that you're going to see, the possibility of seeing one is so like, this time of year. So I told him, I said, Yaakov, you got to pray to Hashem about seeing an eagle also. So he's praying, and he's spending so much time, and I'm like, he's really, and he's going. And I told him, listen, time's up, we got to go home, I'm sorry, but we've been out here for a while, Yaakov, and we got to go home. He said, Bob, I want to see eagles. And I wanted to tell him, sometimes Hashem doesn't, and as I started to walk him out, I thought in my head, I said, what am I crazy? I just told him to pray. He just seen his own 2 little miracles. I said, what am I teaching him by telling him all of a sudden to stop, to give up or whatever? So I said, Yaakov, no, keep praying, keep going. And then I said, okay, now it's time to go. And then I thought again, I said, Hashem, if you heard him twice, why won't you hear him again? And right after I said that, I looked up, and there was an eagle going in a circle overhead, and I said, Yaakov, look, here you go. Hashem, simple, that we will go to Hashem and pray like a little kid. Go to pray. I got to experience it with my own 2 eyes, that we go before Hashem, and we cry out to Hashem, and we can see miracles completely. How will we know? Because Hashem has 2 names. We know two very, very important names. But Hashem is more names than that. So we can't even call Hashem by all the names that He's called. But Elohim, which corresponds to Din, which corresponds to it's just the gematria of Teva. So we know that Teva, Din, Elohim, we know that this is a relationship that even the Ramchal is telling us in Misal Yesharim, that this is how Hashem created the world. He wanted to do it all in strict justice, but then He brought in the Midah Rachamim. He's seen that the world wouldn't survive in that way. What is Rachamim? It tells us in Brachot, In the Gemara, it says that the rachamim is tefillah. Tefillah is rachamim. What is tefillah? What is rachamim? Rachamim comes at a time where there's din, where there's something that's supposed to happen. The rachamim comes and overrides the din, which makes it lamala mehateva. It's above nature. The same thing by tefillah, which is rachamim, corresponds as bechinat rachamim, is also lamala mehateva. That once a person goes and he responds in any situation above nature with tefillah, they're acting lamala mehateva. Hashem is forced to respond mita connected mita to the person. Goes to show it's very, very simple. By opening our mouths and talking to Hashem, that we can see major miracles. And especially when you daven on the tshuva of somebody else, you can daven on somebody else's tshuva. That's the only way. I'm going to say that's the ikar. And the way of bringing a person back to Hashem is no better thing than to daven on that person. Even a parent that has a kid that's going off the derech. There have been miracles. I've seen it. I have a friend right now who's been out of his house for 8 months, and his marriage was going down the drain. He met me and my brother-in-law. I told him, listen, I know the psychiatrist is great. Here's this book, same book, it worked for me. Go to the field, start talking to Hashem every single day. And he's checking in with us, and he's talking, and he's nervous. What if it doesn't work out? I told him, get out of here. Because once we start to know who Hashem is, we will never say crazy things like that. What if my kid just goes and they're left for, and all of my efforts, and on the first off, put in the effort because you haven't even seen yet. You're already what-ifing before you even start the process. Second off, what are we to think of Hashem? Hashem wants you to be without your wife, and for your children to have the issues of being in a split home. Hashem wants for you to have to suffer that your kid is going off, or that that's what Hashem wants. First off, let's first, we're not thinking, what is it? Who is Hashem and what does He want? And once we start to think about who is Hashem and what does He want, He gave me the mitzvah of being married. He's not going to bring me shidduch. He's not going to bring me shidduch all of a sudden. But a lot of time things are up there, and by the tefillah we bring them down, we actualize them, we reveal our ratzon. When we start to speak to Hashem, we're able to bring those things about. So the ikar really in itself is tefillah. That's the main thing. That's what's going to bring people back. I see it myself all day long. I see it myself with the kids and the people that I'm interacting with. Everything I have, I know for sure is only by the way of prayer or just a free gift from Hashem that I'm going to have to pray for later. So, another question.
You recently made Aliyah to Israel, right? Where do you live in Israel?
I live in Rechavia, in Israel. In Rechavia.
And can I ask you a favor?
Yes.
You go to the hotel often, right?
I go to the hotel often.
Can I give you my name so you can put it there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. No problem.
Thank you.
No problem.
When you became Jewish, right, like, was it hard to keep Shabbat and keep and all that?
That's a good question. It's a very good question. No, it was not hard for me to take on mitzvah like Shabbat and Kashrut and all of those things. Only reason why, though, is because I fell in love with Hashem. When I went through, first thing I did when I started to see that everything that I thought about Christianity or whatever was wrong, first thing I did was I said, Hashem, I'm starting over. I'm going to read the Tanakh from the beginning to the end, and I'm only looking for your character, whether you like, whether you dislike, whether you love, whether you reward, I wanted to know these things about Hashem, so I started reading. That was the only thing I was looking for. I wasn't trying to become a Baki and Nach or nothing. I just wanted to know. And slowly but surely, when I got to the Navi and I started to see the love that Hashem had for the Jewish people, I was taken aback. And I couldn't myself, I felt a part of that love, and I wanted to be a part of that love. And every day that I started talking to God. I was, like I said, I'm not giving you breast love a shtick. I'm talking about my natural reaction after having all of those feelings was to just start talking to God. It was, I couldn't help it. And then more and more time, it's just like two friends, all right? Me and my best friend, my wife and her sister are best friends. I don't know how that happens. Most sisters fight. I don't know how they got off, For the first time, I was like over their house and seeing how like they interacted with each other, and I was just like, this is weird. Siblings are supposed to like hate each other, right? It doesn't happen by then. They're best friends. They will be out together all day,
come home and talk on the phone like they weren't just with each other, and then hang up. And if the kids are getting ready to bed, they talk again before they go to bed. And then at 4 o'clock in the morning, they're both up. You up? You up? They're talking on the phone again. What's going on here? Now they're so close. There's some people you can't even tell them apart on the phone, the way they talk, and different things. They say so many different things, and they have such a power of influence, I guess, on each other. So once a person makes Hashem their best friend, right? You're spending time with them, you're talking with them, you're learning Torah, which is the Hashem's revealed thoughts into this world. You're spending time with Hashem, the more and more that He has an effect on you. I'm sorry, you're not going to have a power of influence on Hashem. I don't think He's going to, it's just not going to happen. But the power of influence that Hashem will have on the person, from you making Hashem your best friend, you become in love. You're willing to do whatever it is that you can to be able to make the other person happy. It's a relationship. So then once you get there, Shabbos is easy. Everything's easy. It's not so that's why sometimes for me it's so hard to be. I had the fortunate thing that I got to have my own Har Sinai experience. So I didn't have also whatever they say, the neshama was there before anyway, but I had to do it again, and because of that, I had the experience of having that kedushin, of having that marriage with Hashem. It's very, very easy in those moments. Later on, it's harder. You want to get up for nates, you can't get up for nates. You got to do hard, different things like that, but. Things like that, the Shabbos, everything was so easy for me, I never had a moment I never regretted my conversion to Judaism. I never regretted it. And I'm not just saying it, I'm telling you honest. And I had moments, right after I was done converting, I went into Gullus. I was homeless for a year with my family, completely. I didn't reject Hashem once, didn't think that He wasn't going to come for me. There was a guy who was well off. He came to me one day, he seen me smiling on a Shabbos. And he said he knew that I was in a horrible state financially, didn't know where we were going to, it was bad. And on top of that, I was at Children's Hospital every week. One of my kids, he broke his arm, and then the next day, this one was sick with this, and this baby was in the hospital on a breathing machine, and this. I was going through it. His mamish hit right after this. Hashem sent me into Gullus, from Garris to Gullus. That's the next talk. And I was smiling on my way to shul. And he just couldn't understand that somebody could be. He came up to me and said, "Listen, Baruch Hashem, no money problems. Life has been fine. My children are healthy. I'm healthy." He just knew. Everybody knew what was going on. And he said, "You really trust Hashem, don't you?" And I said, "Yeah, I do. I do trust Hashem. I didn't thought twice about it." And he said, "Listen, I have all of these things, and Baruch Hashem, life is fine." He said, "But I cannot say that I trust Hashem. I can't say. If I was in your shoes, that I would." He said, "I can't say it. I can't." And he walked off. I said a few words to him, different things, and he walked off. And I said to Hashem, what I have is more precious than riches and gold, because I have hope. I know. I have a knowing. I have faith in Hashem that everything's going to change, and one day it will. And Baruch Hashem, it did in a major way. No, we live in Yerushalayim, in Rehavia, like 4 minutes away from each other. My wife chases around the kids in the house, and she enjoys it. She takes them to the hotel when I'm out of town too, also too. So like I said, that's a full-time job. She's got the real hard work. Yes, I am still making music. Baruch Hashem, we just finished a new record, thank God, and so hopefully within the next weeks to a month or so, it'll be out and available. Baruch Hashem. Bezat Hashem.
Could you rap something right now?
Maybe after everybody's questions are done.
There's a question over there.
There's a question over there. Yeah.
You say a lot. You pray to Hashem. Do you pray with your own prayer, or you have like a siddur following?
Right, it's a good question. The ikar of tefillah, even brought down even through the Rambam, is this was that a person would feel aroused to tshuva or something in their heart where there was remorse, that, and then they would well up and they would pray to Hashem. There was never we had the Anshek and Esegedallah and their great, awesome holiness and great wisdom that formed the prayers that we pray today out of the Siddur, which are very holy, but it's very hard to connect to them sometimes. We're not always connected. And I'm a Drega, due to Yeridas Ador, that the generations keep going, it's only so much. It doesn't remove our obligation to pray the prayers, but it's very, very hard somewhat. In the Tefillah, when we talk about Tefillah, that Abraham Avinu, Yaakov Avinu, think all the Tzaddik and Eliyahu Hanavi, Moshe Rabbeinu, they were crying out to Hashem as their heart was overwhelmed with emotion, and they start to speak to Hashem in their own words. So the Ikar Tefillah, and Tefillah, the Araita, according to many, is that speaking to Hashem in your own words completely. I think it goes without being said that a person can express themselves a whole lot more when you're more comfortable with the Lashon and you have a command of the language and also able to express your feelings. So that's what I mean more than anything. Doesn't mean that I stop prayer. I pray, Shachri Micha Avit, I pray every day. And then also too, I like to spend time alone with Hashem every day also. Good question.
What's your favorite thing? Like, it's asking what is your favorite diamond, but what's the Shabbat, holiday, like what's your favorite thing?
What's my favorite Chag?
Anything, out of the whole process, what's your favorite thing?
What's my favorite thing out of all?
What do you enjoy the most?
What do I enjoy the most? Apart from my wife's cooking. Record that one, send that to her. That'll win me something, Send that clip of that one. Probably davening. Friday night I have the privilege of davening in a wonderful shul in Shara Chesed. But there's something about davening amongst a group of people that everybody's trying to pray to Hashem with fire, and in a group and singing songs that really, really open up the heart. I don't think there's no pleasure like that, and no other pleasure I will also say than sitting at a table for Seudah and Shabbat and singing Zemirot. I mean, these are the things that, arouse a neshama. You ask another thing, what's going to bring a person back? You bring a person to the right table on Shabbos, on Friday night, and everything's lit the right way, and Zemirot is saying, and people, it opens up the neshama. A person can be rescued from all type of things, just from a good Shabbos. We're not talking about shtiot and politics and other things, but just to talk about, this is a time to talk about real Devekus, being really close to. These are the things I find pleasure in. People to do, talking to Hashem. I don't know. So those are probably my things. It's hard for me to say one thing. Sukkot's probably my favorite holiday of all holidays. But I listen to Jewish music. I like Simchas Chaim CDs, all of those. I have fun dancing with my kids. I listen to Carl Bach. I listen to Shweki. Shweki's got a new album out that's really nice. Yeah.
I used to watch TV a lot. I stopped watching. I don't have TV in my house.
Oh, Hashem.
But music, to me, personally, is very hard.
Yeah.
I try not to listen to it, but sometimes, I try to listen to only Jewish music. And for some reason, music to me, I see is much harder than not watching TV.
Right.
And I have to listen to music while doing my stuff.
Right.
So how would you do it? I want to ask your opinion of how you do stuff.
With music for me, like I said, I think it probably goes back to what he asked me. I fell in love with this shit. One of the first things I did was throw out all my non-Jewish CDs. That was like one of the first things I went and tossed them through. Because it was just very clear for me, my Xbox, I think we had Xbox, and we calculated how much time we had spent playing games of our life, and we just went and sold them. It was just like from that, it just was like, we need to go do some. So I was very, very chazak on things because of the I guess the infatuation or the love stage I was with Hashem. It wasn't to be a pious person. I didn't have Gedolei Yisrael. I didn't know how
upset Chacham Ovadia was at TVs being in the house. You know, it didn't move me. I was already moved by the simple fact that I felt like it was hurting or damaging my relationship with Hashem, and so that was enough for me to start moving things out of the way. It's not so easy all the time, but I can understand for each person. But for me, that was what did it for me. The issue is with I think with the music is that it's one of those things that enter in. And it happens very subtly, but we don't realize. Even one of the biggest reasons why I started making music again was because I understood the power that music has, not only on an individual, but to be an influence in the world. They said the prophets, will come to Nevuah. The Nevuah will come by the way of music. Music has the koach to arouse a person to a state of prophecy. So, kol sheken, if it can do that, right? If you listen to the wrong type of music, you see what it can do to the neshama on the other side. If you're listening to something that's not elevating you into a place of kedusha, that's in a simple way. It's very, very hard. It's not something that's hard. But listen, just like anything else that a person wants to overcome, if a person will be completely arrogant to say, listen, from this on, I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop. The truth is, we go back to knowing what Hashem wants. Hashem wants you. Even though He commands us many things, He says, also too, I think it's in Yirmiyahu, He says when he's chastising Am Yisrael, He says that, listen, I don't want the blood of your goats or your bulls. I don't want your Shabbos. I don't want your Yamin Tovim. I don't want none of them. I want you. So it doesn't matter how much of these different things that we're trapped in. Once we start the relationship with Hashem in a strong way, and we become bound up with Hashem. One of the biggest things, I hate to embarrass him, because he wouldn't want that praise from my brother-in-law. He's a fire back there. He doesn't talk until you start, and then you won't get him to stop. But I look at him, everything he wants to be. He's a true Masmi, and I see him, he's learning Torah all the time. He's so bound up with Torah. And that's his excitement. His excitement is nothing other to go to a bookstore. He wants to go to a bookstore, and it's a serious thing, I was looking into getting help for him, how much he likes to go to the bookstore. So, you know what I mean? He wants to read Seforim, he's a Gedolim, he's a but it's because he's bound up with Hashem at the Shorish, and that relationship that he has to Hashem becomes the fire for him that motivates him to keep going. Whenever you see, all those things, I tell you an experience I had about the music. Let me tell you an experience. You want to hear this? There was a kid who asked me, Yeshiva Bach, we were in a shul, and he said to me, you know what? How come I can't just go to Tel Aviv and just be free? I want to just go. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to just go to Tel Aviv. Why can't I go? And then he said to me, and then I said to him, I said, go to Tel Aviv. And I said, why would you want to do that? He said, because I want to live life. I want to go enjoy the world. That's what I want to do. And I said, what about the next world? He said, listen, I'll deal with it when I get there, Right now, I want to enjoy this one. So that's what I'm going to do. So I said that I think your question is coming from the fact that you don't really know Hashem. You may understand the concept or whatever, but I think it's a relationship thing with you and Hashem that you need to be working. He said, I know Hashem. He said, Hashem is there. Hashem is there. I know Hashem is there. And I said, you just proved it. I said, no, you don't. I said, because Hashem is here. Hashem's inside the person. And the moment that you say that Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is there, I said, you're pointing, Hashem is up there, but if He was here, you would never ask the question. You have such a hergish towards all the questions you're asking. You need to go to Tel Aviv. It comes from a lack of das. He doesn't know Hashem. Hashem is here. He's not up there somewhere. Hashem's right here. And so when I said this to him, he said, okay, whatever. And I said that generally when we start to see the words that come out of our mouths as we're speaking, the more and more person talks, don't try it on other people, try it on yourself. Anytime, any room for Eitzah, Musar, anything like that, try it on yourself. It's not for other people. But we listen to the words that we talk about. We listen to what we speak about. Even on Shabbos, it's a great, great test. But you start to see what's important. And those things reveal to you what you're bound up with. One of the questions I used to ask in in the missionary programs all the time is, what's stopping you from connecting with God? What's that one thing that's blocking you? And I feel like, in a truthful way, what stops us is that there are things, but they haven't been revealed to us. So by the more and more we speak, and the more we begin to reveal our will, by the power of speech, you're revealing your will. So when you start to hear those things, then you start to know what you're bound up with, what's most important to you, what's your life, what are you about. And I sent this over to this kid. And he said, whatever. So the conversation ended. And then slowly after that, he started singing a Goyish song. Oh, I pick my poison. Blah, blah. Right after that, my brother said, there it goes. Boom. Right there. He revealed it right there. That all the ideologies, we have to understand, this is not something I'm telling you because, Gedolei Yisrael say, you only need to have this kind of phone. You don't need to have a TV. You don't need to that. We don't need nobody to tell us nothing. We know that Hashem is in the world and the Sham is yearning for Hashem. So why do we have to be yelled at all day by the rabbis? We don't need to be yelled at them. It has nothing to do with them. It has to do with our connection to Hashem. With the music, different things like that, they allow things to go into us very, very slowly, because think about what happens when you listen to music. You do this. You're agreeing. You're saying yes. Saying yes. That's one of the things that you're doing. You're saying yes. And when it's coming from a person who's not a virtuous person, a person that you really shouldn't give a time of day, a person that's bound up with all type of different things, and you listen to that music and you start to agree, it's no different than reading a newspaper. I was talking about Shtina, and it fills up our head, and then slowly but surely, if we look deep enough, we have hashkafot, we have things in our head that don't line up with Torah. We're kafira in some ways, where we don't really believe in Hashem 100%, even though Hashem says this way, we don't. And then before you know it, either one or two things happen. We continue in this way and don't realize that we really don't have true faith in Hashem, and that we're all mixed up in the head, and then we always feel so confused. Or the other thing happens where a person creates their own Hashem, and all of a sudden God accepts this, and he's this is okay, and I can live however I want to, and I can still believe in God, because slowly but surely I've created Hashem by the things I allow to enter into myself, my filtercism, my filter, all of those things. That's the danger in it, and it's very tough, because I myself see that as one of the biggest things, and one of the reasons why I started to get involved in music again, because I know for a fact, I know myself at least. I can at least know what I'm involved in and how sick I am, and trying to find it and make tshuva. I'm not saying that I'm the only person who's actually chas v'shalom. I'm not saying that. But I was in a speaking tour in London, and a boy came up to me during after one of my talks, and he said to me, he said, "You know what? I'm really having a tough time making it to shir in the morning and davening, and I feel so uninterested, and I don't really know, and things." And I had siyata d'shmaya from Hashem. I didn't know what to say to the boy, because who knows, sometimes you're on the spot with these things. And immediately came to my head to ask him, what are you listening to? I knew it. Immediately after he said those words to me, I knew that it was something that I was listening to. And he told me 50 Cent, Eminem, listen to Drake, listen to all that. I said, do you realize that every day that you're listening to that, every time you're listening to that, you're filling your mind, your heart, your neshama, everything with a message that's completely contrary to Torah, completely contrary to everything that you stand for. This is what is feeding you, and then you still expect to have koach to come in the morning to daven and to learn to. It's an impossible thing that over time these things, they begin to wear on us, and we're not aware of it, but they sneak in by just listening a little bit. And but it's not so easy. But the main thing is that the truth is that by us connecting with Hashem doesn't need us to be perfect. All right. Same thing for me. I realize all of a sudden now I don't listen to non-Jewish music, so now I can come to Hashem. No, we come to Hashem with all of our baggage, with every single thing that's wrong with us and everything that's right with us, and we go to Hashem, and then we begin to work on the relationship. And then slowly but surely we see how easy it is to let this one go and that one go and that one go, because Your eyes is on the prize. You bound up with Hashem. And so the more and more he takes place in your life, it uproots all of those other things that you think that are really strong taivas for you, that they're really not. They're very, and they go. But that's my long, short answer, whatever that means.
I just want one more question. You myself is from Russia. I did not go to yeshiva, but I'm getting slowly more religious.
Oh.
But my kids go to yeshiva.
Uh-huh.
Right now I have a babysitter. She is very spiritual, but she is the Seventh-day Adventist.
Ah.
They keep Shabbos, they kind of keep portions. They don't keep certain things.
Right.
And I find her to be very spiritual. I see that spark like you're talking about.
Right.
But the God they believe is Jesus.
Right.
And since I don't have a background and a good, I don't have like an educational background, I wish I could explain her. I mean, it might be a little bit political question, but since you have a good background and you could come here and so my question is to you: what would be the message to her? What is why in the history did we really they believe that we did something to Jesus and why they believe in Jesus being that he's the Messiah and he's the God.
Yeah.
I mean, what would be the message to her to take time education for everyone?
It's a good question. One thing I would say is that I would caution myself against getting into those type of conversations. And as cordial as you can keep it, and as less you can keep it away from spirituality with her, will always be the best. You have to understand one thing. This is one of the biggest reasons why I came to Judaism, and what attracted me more is that, listen, one kid asked me, they said, why Judaism and not Christianity, Islam? You were there, how do you know you're going to stay? When a person is given something, you give me $1 million, I win the lottery, that money gets blown so quick, but when you have to work for it, I have to work for my Yiddishkeit, so when you work for it, you hold on to it. It's not so easy for you to let it go and to give it away. So that was one of the biggest things, and one of the reasons why is because Judaism doesn't proselytize. We're not out, and you don't go to hell if you're not Jewish. Unfortunately, by Islam and Christianity, they hold that idea that if you don't believe what they believe, you go to hell. So sometimes it's very, very hard for a Christian. They feel almost as if they have an achrayus. They have to share their faith with you, and especially to see if you're not as strong or whatever, even if you're growing and different things like that. To create those type of conversations. It doesn't mean they're a bad person. She's probably the best person, the greatest person in the world. But it doesn't remove the fact that that's one of the general principles, like that they feel that they have to spread that word. And any way that they can take to slowly do it, and it happens over time. I know of covert missionaries that are in Black Hat, they look further than me, and they're in Israel and they're sneaking around and all that. And I know people who are very, very osek in finding these guys. But it just almost never stops. So I would say that if it's necessary that you continue having her be your babysitter, that you would keep the conversations far away from that. Because even to give her educated reasons as to why JC is not the Messiah and everything like that. We're dealing with something that people that have worked on it for years, they've been studying this matter, and they debate and everything, and they're constantly sharpening themselves. For us to answer to people, and one of the biggest weaknesses right now, we're not very familiar with Nach right now. We don't know Nach in Yiddishkeit like we should, and Christians are very skilled at it. So trying to explain to them what's inside. They're very, very skilled at Nach because they know it very well, because for a reason that it proves for them all of the proofs about JC being the Messiah. So very, very, I think, in my opinion, if you're asking me, I would stay away from that conversation as much as possible, if I could, and deal with her cordially. And that's just, but, yeah, I'm sure. It's a very good question. I still talk to my father. I haven't talked to too much any of my family since I've been to Israel. You know, it costs a lot of shekels, you know, for that. But and I only moved 6 months ago, so it's been, you know, and I've probably been back and forth to America. I don't know how many times. There are other places, Baruch Hashem, because they're Hashem, I'm not complaining. But I haven't talked to them. I remember on Father's Day, I remembered only because I was in America. Over in Israel, they said it doesn't exist. So I forget all the holidays over there, or what's going on here in America. But I did call, but I don't think he was able to call me back, so I didn't. I did call, but it's a good question, but I haven't really talked to anybody. Not all the time because I'm trying to avoid it. It's just that I don't, you know, I'm busy, life is going, and you have your family, you know, and so it's very, very tough sometimes to remember. And then the second question, where do I see myself in 10 years? Hopefully skinny, I don't know. It's not that shit. We all have our New Year's resolutions, you know. I don't know, I hope to be, I know at least what I hope to accomplish in 10 years. What I hope to accomplish in 10 years. I think my wife is calling me. Sweetie, I am standing in front of a crowd speaking right now, and they're all looking at me talk on the phone. And they're laughing now. Okay, I love you. Okay, bye-bye. Okay, bye-bye. She said, thank you guys for being so patient to deal with me, answering my phone. She's a sweet girl. I don't deserve her. So 10 years, I hope to have accomplished, you know, exactly what I was speaking about earlier, that a lot of people, you know, I think that, you know, being a ger and being open to speak about it, a lot of people don't, you know, they get in and they hide, and unfortunately, I can't hide so easily, you know. There's things preventing me from just acting like I've been here, you know. So, but one of the things is that I hope to reveal the preciousness and the sweetness of the relationship that we have with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, and to bring back a lot of neshamas back home, people that want to come in any way that I can, whether it's standing, whether it's walking somewhere, whether it's, you know what I mean, getting spit down and me'asharim, whatever it takes, to be able to bring people, you know, back to Hashem, to see the beauty of what we have here. For me, for the life of me, I understand and then I don't understand. One level, like I said earlier, I do understand because, listen, when you're raised with something your entire life, sometimes it's hard to appreciate it. That's why Yitzchak Avinu was so precious, because he was able to take Yiddishkeit, and he didn't take with Abraham, he made it his own, and we see this. So it's a very, very interesting idea of that in itself. But I also see, like, listen, you know, I didn't have Shabbos when I was a kid. If I would have had Shabbos, you know what I would have been if I had Shabbos. You know, so it's also that piece of me. But to reveal the kindness and the mercy of Hashem and His love in the world. So 10 years from now, hopefully something like that has happened, you know, in a large scale. We're big dreamers. We're going to go get everybody before Mashiach. Everybody's like rushing, right? My Rav, we all the different path. We want to hold off a little bit because, listen, there's going to be no more game, no more Baal Tshuva after Mashiach gets there. Who wants that? We don't want that. We want to bring all of our cousins and our sisters and our family back. We don't want to stop it all now. Not saying we want to tarry, but we want Hashem to bring Mashiach at the appropriate time, that we have all the neshamas back. Okay. All right, that's enough questions, everybody said. Thank you guys so much. I was asked to do a piece. I don't know. You want that? Let me to rap in shul. I usually don't rap in shul. So I have to think. Maybe I could give you guys something a little bit of from the new album. This is from the new record. Witness the dream we come to, that no matter what you've gone through, a seal of protection is on you. Open your eyes so you can see who. In every generation we stand tall, and even if they hate us, we don't concern ourselves with fairy tales or plead the fifth. No, we won't. Hashem's our King, Prince Charming, our knight in shining armor. Whoever may come to harm us, he will stand and defend his honor. The more we love, the more from above we see salvation spring forth. This is the truth of history. Let victory take its course.
All right, that's it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.